service in Asheville, and I never trust computers, so I brought paper, and I'm so glad. So I'm here to talk about the journey of caregiving and what it's like to be a caregiver. And I thought I would speak. You all have wonderful presentations today. I think I'm the last one. Am I the last speaker? Oh, you have the caregiver panel. Okay, good. But I wanted to speak to you all about this just from the perspective of mental health for caregivers. And as a caregiver myself for a family member last year, what that was like, and so kind of as a peer, that process, and just talk through, some of this process there. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm an Army veteran. I'm a psychologist, and I serve as the chief of the mental health service in Asheville, and I've been with the VA for 12 years now. So I love the job. It's just a wonderful thing to be there every day and serve veterans. So one of the things that I think is really interesting about being a caregiver is how caregivers and the person receiving care become very intertwined in their lives. And they may already be. Spouses are very intertwined, but it changes. A parent and a child, that relationship changes through that process of caregiving as the parent ages. And it's really an interesting thing to me that, I know that people talk about it, but it's such a gradual process sometimes. Sometimes it's really a fast process, depending on how that person gets sick. But the relationship changes, and it's so intertwined and so different from how it's been before. And I think sometimes that gets neglected in terms of being talked about with the caregiver and how they're feeling about that. So those changes in relationships. So you think about, a couple that's married, and one spouse becomes the caregiver, and it changes the dynamics of that relationship because maybe they've been equals, and each one has a role, right, in that relationship for sometimes decades. And so one person does the housework, does the bills, one person does the outside work, and they each have their own areas, right? And then it changes, and one person can't do their part anymore. And then as things go forward, that relationship becomes more independent versus dependent, right? Instead of equal. And how does that change how people feel about being in the relationship? I thought it was really interesting. I don't know if you've seen on the news, Bruce Willis, if you know Bruce Willis, and he's suffering from dementia. And he's got a wife, and they have children at home that she was recently talking about before his diagnosis. She was considering getting a divorce because his behavior had become erratic and so different. She didn't really even know who she was married to and didn't realize he was sick. And then he got a diagnosis of dementia, and she went into that caregiver role. But I thought about, the dynamics of that relationship, and on her part, probably guilt about, being angry with him or arguing and that type of thing before she knew that what was happening was he was sick. He wasn't changing in terms of his personality, like on purpose. He was really sick, and she didn't realize it. And I think that happens a lot. There's a lot of frustration as people age and their functioning, declines. There's a lot of frustration between people before it really becomes, clear that this person is really sick, really needs help. And then there's a lot of grief. Caregivers experience a lot of grief around that changing of the relationship, missing having a partner, and missing what was and looking toward what is in the future. It can be really sad for caregivers as they're going through that. And it can also open up old wounds. You think about in any relationship, whether it's a marriage, a mother, daughter, father, son, any of those relationships, parent-child, there are old conflicts, old wounds. Maybe they're healed, maybe they're not. Maybe just people moved on, but sometimes that relationship can change and it reopens old wounds. And there they are again to deal with. And in some ways that's difficult. In some ways that's the opportunity, as someone's reaching the end of their life to heal that permanently, and for the caregiver to be able to move forward after that person's gone with healing around that conflict or wound. But it's an interesting time, and it's an interesting dynamic, I think, to be a caregiver of someone in your family. I think one of the other things that happens that can be really difficult is starting to have difficult conversations. And so I'll talk about just a little bit about my experience as a caregiver. And I took care of an aunt who became terminally ill, and she was in hospice, and I was her sole caregiver for 4 months last year. And we had to have some really hard conversations that I had never expected to have around her driving and caring for her home and her 10 cats. And those were conversations around, cleanliness, someone who had always been really, really clean, and then, all these things happen, and having to have these conversations with someone in a way that changed that dynamic, and saying, I don't think you should drive anymore, or I don't think, you can do this on your own anymore. We're going to have to find some help for you. It's difficult, and it requires a lot of courage and support. So some of those emotions that come with being the caregiver, sadness, grief, fear about having these conversations, fear that you can do it, right? Fear that you're going to be up to the task of taking care of this person as much as they need, so that they're comfortable, they live the life you want them to live, that quality of life, up to the end of their lives. It's fear about, can you do it on your own? Sense of responsibility. It's a gift to be able to take care of someone that you love. And it's also a huge responsibility. And all responsibility is, it comes with the good and the bad. It's an honor and it's a weight, right? And so when you're feeling that way, trying to find the good in it some days when you're really tired, it's a lot, right? So that's part of that experience, is the good and bad of it all. I had the experience of, watching my aunt do things and not realize it's the last time I'm going to see her do it, because then after time passed, realized she couldn't do it anymore, and that was the last time she did it, right? And dealing with that grief and just kind of the loss of that person, the person I knew, into the person she was moving into as she moved to the end of her life. But I think that happens with couples, with anyone, as people age. It's like you never know the last time you're going to be able to do something, right? And then you can't do it anymore. And you see that person going through this experience and looking back and saying, I didn't realize that's the last time he was going to be able to go out and blow leaves in the yard for this fall. I didn't realize that was the last time. Now I know, because this fall he can't do it. Those are the kind of things, those little losses that add up every day that come in waves. Some anger, right? Because sometimes when people are sick and they're realizing I'm losing all my, independence, they're not nice sometimes, right? There's irritability. You can feel like you're working so hard and that person is not grateful for it. I'm sure they are, but everybody has bad days. And so there's anger about it, or anger when they won't try something and you can see they need to try this new thing or take this medicine or get this shower chair and they won't do it. And you get angry, right? So there's anger involved, exhaustion. It can become a 24/7 job. And the exhaustion that comes with trying to balance all of it with other responsibilities, it can be exhausting. Overwhelm, right? Learning all about new diseases, new medications and treatments, new ways to manage, loss of independence. It can be overwhelming. And then dealing with family And Dr. Molly talked about that too, about just the overwhelming experience it can be of managing all the things, and then sometimes adding jobs in on top of that. It can be really overwhelming. And loneliness and isolation. And that can come from a couple different places. That loneliness and isolation can come from the fact that maybe you're at home and you're staying with that person because they can't be alone, which means you're cutting off any of your outside activities like going to church or going to dinner with friends or clubs or things like that. Things you used to be able to do, you can't participate in anymore because you're staying at home a lot. And then that isolation when the rest of the world's going on and the two of you are there. But there's also loneliness and isolation within that relationship, because as a person gets more sick and more disabled, they're not able to participate in the relationship in the same way, and so the caregiver starts to feel alone, right? They're not dealing with an equal, and it can be really emotionally isolating even when you're with that person all the time. And then, like I said, this fulfillment and sense of duty and pride, I will say, and I know other people have experienced this too, but, being able to give someone the gift of having the end of their life the way they want it is a wonderful gift to give someone. And being able to walk away from a relationship at the end of it and say, you know what, we did this the very best we could. She or he got everything they wanted at the end, and feeling really, really glad and proud of that is a wonderful thing. And that's the rewarding part. It's honoring the relationship you've had for years, honoring the love that you had together by that caregiving. So, I'll talk a little bit about some of the key concepts that I think are important for navigating caregiving. And the first one is support, right? Tons of support. It's going to take more support than you would ever imagine to do it. And that support can come in a lot of different ways. It can come from neighbors, family, friends, your church, the VA, right? Veterans groups, all kinds of places you can get support. You can get support online. And there are all types of resources online, and you can join virtual groups to be able to connect with other people. Facebook, all kinds of places. But getting that support is so important. And just like we've had our OT talk about adaptive equipment, that's a part of support, right? Making things that become hard easier, whether it's the right shower chair, the right walker, all types of tools. Some of those things like using grocery delivery because it takes a task off your plate. Using cameras, to help monitor. Using fall, devices, alerts. Those types of things can really help. Those are types of support because it gives that caregiver a little more freedom to be able to go and do what maybe they need to do, while also feeling like the person they're caregiving for is being able to be cared for well. So support, there's just not enough I can say about support. Support groups, all of that is just so important because it's a marathon and not a sprint. And it will wear you down, so you got to have people in place to help you out. Respite is a huge part of it. And then the next part of that is education, right? The more we understand what's going on, the more we know, the better we can navigate the whole situation as a caregiver. And so understanding the illness, understanding the medications and the side effects, consulting with home health and physical therapy, social work, finding all the resources available, right? Everything that's available to you, everything that can help you navigate what's going on and understand things. It decreases fear, and it helps ask the right questions when you go to the doctor, when you're going to appointments. It just helps you be more prepared for what's happening. It also helps give you, like these types of things, these types of events give you resources and ways to organize the information so that you have it available in a way that you can use it. So education about this is just incredibly important, and it makes the whole process more manageable. I think the next piece of that is self-advocacy. Advocating for yourself as a caregiver is incredibly important, and then advocating for the person you're caregiving for. And it's easy for people to become invisible in big systems, even in small systems. But it's easy to become invisible if you're not asking for help. And so asking for what you need is very important, and not giving up or taking no for an answer, or even, just taking nothing for an answer. Because how many times have I heard people say, well, I went to an appointment, I asked for this and that, and I don't really know what happened after that, and they walk away thinking, maybe I didn't get what I needed. And so asking for what you need, and if you don't get it, asking again, and not being embarrassed to ask again is really important. So it's advocating with medical staff, it's advocating for yourself with family and friends and neighbors, and saying, hey, I need a break. Can someone come and stay for a little bit? Or I need someone to start coming over and helping me give this person a shower from now on, because I can't do it by myself. I need someone to, bring groceries in. I need someone to help take over family events, right? Because those are the things that happen. The person who's always organized Christmas and Thanksgiving may be the person who's sick, or the person who's caregiving, and they can't do it anymore. So instead of just trying to power through, make it happen, even though there's all this other stuff going on, asking for help, advocating for yourself, and saying, we can't do family stuff like we used to right now. So can someone else pick this up and take it? Those are all really important things, and I think advocating for yourself, first of all, it gives you energy to put towards something else that maybe, because if you're advocating and getting what you need, you feel empowered. And so having that energy to give toward the person you're taking care of is really important. I think another piece of this is, we talk about respite a lot, but really respite, what do you do in respite? Do you just go get in the bed and sleep because you're exhausted? Maybe sometimes. But sometimes it's about re-energizing yourself. So planning positive, fun activities, right? Not just, I need a break and I'm going to go try to catch up on all the things I'm behind on. It's positive, planned activities. So things like, I'm going to go to the movie I wanted to see that's on, they're advertising on TV. Or I'm going to go sit in the living room while you do this with dad or husband, and I'm going to watch this show I've been wanting to watch. I'm going to go have coffee with a friend, or I'm going to go to this church event, or I need an hour and I'm going to go work on this puzzle I got, and I want to do that. All of these types of things, but planning it so that it's something that's a you time, and it's something you've been wanting to do that you can't do on a regular basis. But those positive planned activities and breaks are so important, and having something fun that re-energizes you and feeds your own mental health and spirit to have more energy come back. Another piece of this, I think, is just meticulous self-care. And so I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say this is just my experience, but I think it's something that worked for me, and maybe it will help someone. And I know it's not always possible. But I know when I was in a caregiving role, and I've stayed this way because even in my job, every day I'm in a caregiving role. We have 13,000 veterans getting mental health care at the Charles George VA, and I'm responsible for that. So the first thing is feed yourself first every day. Meticulous self-care. You have to take care of yourself first to have anything left to give anyone else. So that means even if it's getting up a little early, that you have time to wash your hair, take a shower, have your cup of coffee, or whether it's reading something you want to read, but having that little bit of time for yourself so that by the time the day starts, you're ready and you have yourself taken care of first. Even if it's just hydrating, any of those things help you get through the day, help you have something, and give you that stamina to go on and on. And I think too, not neglecting your own health in terms of medical appointments, colonoscopies, mammograms, lab work, all those things. You gotta make sure that you are not collapsing under the weight of this physically without even realizing it, and that can happen. Okay, so that's my self-care talk, and then I'm going to talk about a couple of what I call cognitive traps, things that can get people into a situation where they burn out. So a cognitive trap, I'm going to give some examples, okay? And a cognitive trap is a thought or a belief that causes someone to be inflexible, right? And not able to adapt to what's happening in real time. So here's a cognitive trap around caregiving. Taking care of my husband, father, mom, wife, son, daughter is a sign of how much I love that person. Therefore, I cannot allow anyone to help me, because that would be a sign of how much I don't love them anymore. Right? Can you see how that cognitive trap could be the recipe for burnout? Right? And how many times do people go into it thinking that, like, I love this person so much, I'm going to take care of them, and I'm going to do it myself so they know at the end of this that I love them, right? I'm the only person who can take care of the right way. No one else can do it the way I can. We have our thing, and all the, my husband knows how I want me to take care of him. We have our routine. No one else can come in from home health or anyone else and do this the way we do. So I'm the only one who can take care of him the right way. So I can't get help. And then the last one, and there are many of these, but I just picked a few examples. Allowing someone to help is a sign that I am giving up. Okay, so why are these really dangerous? They're dangerous because they lead to burnout. And burnout is dangerous for everyone in a caregiving capacity. Because burnout can lead to behaviors that normally a good person would never do. Like neglecting that person, finally saying, not feeding them, or getting so angry they become physically, they hit the person, they start withholding things from that person they're caregiving for, the person they love most, wishing that that responsibility would end, right? Just assuming bad intentions on the part of the person that they're taking care of. Like, I know you could get up and walk if you really wanted to, but now you're making me do this for you, right? Assuming those bad intentions. Burnout leads to those types of thoughts. It's dangerous because it can lead to abuse, and people who are caregivers who start out and always love that person can become so burned out and exhausted that they become the person who hurts the person they're taking care of. So, what does burnout look like? Burnout is just prolonged emotional, mental, physical stress. And it takes over all aspects of your being. And I know Dr. Molly said it's hard to come back from. It is hard to come back from because burnout means you are burned out. And to build back, you're building back from ashes. So it takes a lot to come back from it if you can. So some of the signs of burnout. So cognitive mental signs: forgetfulness, brain fog, depression, cynicism. Those are some of those signs. Emotionally, just increasingly negative, and that can be about everything, not just the person you're taking care of, but just everything. Just increasingly negative, feeling like there's no pleasure in anything anymore. Nothing makes you feel happy. You don't look forward to anything. It becomes that, okay, wake up, I'm on a treadmill, here's the next day to take care of this person in my life that I had. It's gone, and, I'm just walking a treadmill every day, the same thing, and it's not good. being voluntarily isolating, right? Sometimes taking care of someone can be involuntarily isolating, but when you stop, answering the phone for people who are calling to check on you, or someone says, hey, I'll come and help. No, we don't want anyone here. Starting to notice those signs, like, I don't want anybody around, I don't have the energy to interact with people anymore. Those are signs of burnout, and they're the early signs, but that's the start of doing something. That's when you need to start reaching out, because you don't want to let yourself, as tempting as it can be, to walk into that and allow yourself to go down that road of isolating yourself and not having any supports. Feeling like you're a failure in all of it, maybe in everything in your life, but even in your caregiving, just feeling like I don't know what I'm doing, I'm a failure, feeling numb, just nothing at all. Those are all signs of burnout. Some of the physical symptoms of burnout, GI distress, high blood pressure, fatigue, headaches, muscle aches, changes in appetite. Some people, when they get stressed, they can't eat a bite. Some people, when they get stressed, eat a ton. And so those changes in appetite are a good indicator of stress levels, and they're important to pay attention to. So, when these thoughts are happening and you're seeing some of these signs, that's the time to reach out, okay? I know caregiver support at the VA has wonderful programs, and all designed to help avoid this process that I have spelled out in detail for everyone. But I know that and I know in mental health, we offer therapy, for caregivers through that program, and we're happy to do that. And there are all kinds of other programs as well within the community that can help support caregivers. So I just really encourage all of you, first of all, it's a wonderful, wonderful gift to be a caregiver, and also to take care of yourself while you're doing it. Okay, let me see what I want to make sure I don't get off my slides here. Okay, so some of the resources, I know we've had a lot of information today about resources, so I won't go through a lot of that. But, our VA Caregiver Support Program is excellent. Of course, the VA built one of the best caregiver support programs in the country, because VA is amazing. Individual therapy, whether that's through VA or in the community. And, there are a lot of virtual telehealth therapy programs that people can engage in if a caregiver cannot leave home, but can still be part of that. Getting respite, whether that's an hour respite, a weekend respite, but some type of respite, and then community resources, relying on those. So I think that is all I have. I think so. So I'll just open it up for any questions or anything that you all want to ask.
Thank you so much. That was really wonderful.
Thank you.
I just had a comment about, I think it came up when you were talking about in the beginning, something about resources, but my husband just had a recent surgery through Geripact, and we didn't find out that there were that there could be additional resources to make sure that the surgery was going to be okay. I can't remember who I asked about it, but I mentioned it, I think, to somebody. I'm sorry, I'm a little tongue-tied. But then we got referred to the GIMS program, who evaluated whether my husband would survive the surgery intact, cognitively. So the point I'm trying to make is just that if we ask, because I think you said something about asking questions, or I can't remember what it was, but the more questions we ask, the more we can get connected to the other resources that are available. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Okay. Thank you all so much.